Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Waffles and Wives podcast. I am Alicia Miles, and today I'm really excited because it's my first in-person session. So I'm really excited. I have one of my closest and longest friends here with me today. And so we're going to try to chit chat and have a good time. And today's topic, I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. So my guest today is Miss Tamara Hardnett. Hey. And so really quickly, I wanted to show you some goodies that we actually have. So we were actually trying to snack a little bit before we jumped on, but I bought these little charcuterie boxes. It's a place here in Columbus. By the way, this is not a promo. I don't, these people ain't paying me to do nothing. But yeah, I wanted to try it out because I heard they were in town. But the place is called Gray's Craze, and they make these really pretty charcuterie boxes. And so far, everything we've tasted has been really good. So Tamara and I actually have our boxes, and we also have our mimosas. I told y'all to grab your mimosa, so we got ours. So hope y'all have y'all's tonight. So the topic for tonight is under the category of for better or for worse. And essentially, we're going to talk about how no marriage is perfect. No marriage is perfect. And one of the things that we talked about was couple goals, how people talk about doing couple goals and things like that. So we're going to tap into that. But first, I want to talk to more about how we actually met and when we actually met. So it's been a long time. I know we met at Troy. Yep. We met at Troy University, and I remember you probably came a year after I did, and I got there in 2005.
Yep, I came in 06.
Okay, so you came in 06. I was trying to figure out, I was like, I think she came a year after me. So yes, we were actually employees together at Troy University when it was actually on Fort Benning. So as you know, that was a long time ago because things have changed since then. But we actually met and immediately hit it off. Your babies were young then. Now they're grown. So that just kind of tells me how long we've known each other. Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. So the topic for today, we're going to probably hit on a lot of different things. But how long have you and Chris been married?
We were married 23 years on July 8th.
So 23 years. And Demetrius and I have been together for 23 years. Okay. We've only been married for 17, but the 23 years we've been together. So let's just jump right into it then. I kind of want to start with, you guys have probably been through a lot.
Yes, we have.
As most marriages will go through a lot for the most part. And at the first sign of problems in marriages, sometimes we'll be like, I go back home to my mama. I go back home to my mama. Ain't no thing. Like, you ain't don't worry me. I'm gonna go back home to my mama. So, did you guys have marriage counseling before you got married?
No, we were supposed to, but the pastor at his home church that married us, someone stole his car the day that we were to have marriage counseling. Okay. And so, because he wasn't going to marry, so I have marriage counseling. So he was one of those pastors, if I don't counsel you, I'm not married. But he made that exception because someone had stolen his car. Okay. So we did not have marriage counseling before we got married. Before we said I do, no marriage counseling.
Okay, all right. So without it, tell me this though. Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have waited and just did your marriage counseling before you got married?
No. And I don't think so because because he was a pastor. Okay. And I was raised in the church. He wasn't. So he was coming from a Christian religion perspective, which I would understand, but my husband wouldn't have.
Okay. That makes
sense.
sense.
If we would have done counseling, I would have preferred it to have been somebody that's non-neutral. That didn't have just a regular counselor and not a religious faith.
Just overly religious.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of, but I feel like that's the dynamic of a lot of marriages though. There's always going to be one who might be more into faith than the other, or like you said, grew up in the church like I did.
Definitely me.
Yeah. And so that does like, it is kind of awkward, I would imagine. And if you're trying to introduce somebody to something that they're not used to when they try to get there, which is already hard to do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I like about your relationship is that you already had a child when y'all got married. And I wouldn't be able to tell to this day that was not her biological father. Like, they just seem like they have a really good relationship. And so knowing that having a child going into a marriage, did you have to do like some prep work for both of them? Or did it start off just being natural and they just kind of, everything just fell into place?
I think everything kind of fell into place, but my whole thing was, this is my daughter. So you can't accept her, you don't accept me. So he knew that. I'm not gonna say he knew that going in, and I made that clear. I'm not gonna, push my child to the side. Just to, how some people, another parent will come in, or a step parent will come in, and then they're like, want to scoop the child out the way. And I'm like, no, sir, I guess we're not doing that.
Package deal.
Exactly.
Package deal.
Exactly. When you unwrap me, you got two gifts. So that's
two
how
gifts.
it was. Yes.
Two gifts.
That's two for private work.
Absolutely. So with our topic, no marriage is perfect. I think we see, and I think it honestly starts with the wedding. We start comparing our experiences to other people's. I think, she had that at home, I want to have that in mine. And this, I think we start doing this comparison very early on, and we like to weigh that against, well, they don't do that in their household. And my whole mind says, you don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
You don't know what's going on. But her husband did this, her husband did. How do you know that? How are you? Yeah, like how are you? How do you know that they don't have any problems just because of what they show you on social media?
Exactly.
That's
what it is.
Right. Like you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. They could hate each other.
They might hate each other. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the thief of comparison and how. I might look at y'all and y'all going on trips every 2 weeks, and here we are struggling to make ends meet. And so we immediately start comparing our experiences to other people's. And somehow or another, I feel like that just creates discord because now you're giving him an expectation that one, he may not want to meet, or two, it's not a natural exchange for y'all.
Exactly.
So talk about how, comparing yourself to other marriages or other people can actually hurt your marriage.
It can. My whole thing is, what's for you is for you, and what's for you, that's yours. What's for me is mine. God, he didn't give me what he gave you, and he didn't give you what he gave me when it came to marriage. Like you said, with a lot of these internet relationships that are relationship goals, you don't know what the crap that is going on. When they close that door, they're probably going into separate rooms, separate wings of the house, and then they come out for appearances. And a lot of things that people are doing, it is strictly for appearances. It's not, they're not being authentic with me. And I'm guilty of looking at other people like, well, dang, I wish, dang, I wish. Yeah. And I'm like, how everybody doing this and we can't do it? Especially like being in the military, when we were stationed in El Paso, he was a private. I'm pregnant with a baby, wasn't working. And it's just like, I'm looking at other people like, every time I turn around, they're buying something. Every time I turn around, my neighbors, they're going somewhere. And it's just like, it can depress you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, God, what's going to be my come up? When I'm going to grow up?
When is my seat?
Because you get impatient and wanting and waiting for those things.
Yeah.
But it's like, give you an example. One of my neighbors in El Paso, that was down the street. I can give you a couple of things. So two things happening on that street. We live in El Paso. People was getting pregnant and getting divorced.
Oh, okay.
And I had two babies, so we
okay.
We're going. Yeah. One lady down the street, she had spent up all their money, and she was trying to sell stuff to make up her husband's money while they went TDY.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking like, but y'all had that looking real good to me.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, well, and then the people who lived directly next door to me, you couldn't tell that they had 9 toes out the door on both ends. Cause we wake up one day and I'm like, where is at?
Yeah.
Wait for another day. I see that how it is. Go find a listen. But no, this is when I knew that things was really that it was done. So I'm leaving out the house and I'm like, is that a woman going in the house with? I said, oh. And I think it was then when that feeling of I want what they have started to wane.
Oh.
Just because it looked good on the outside does not mean that it's good on the inside. And I keep telling myself, like, okay, just because it looks, everything that's shiny is not gold. So just kind of put yourself back. And it's like, even as time goes on, I will find myself falling back into that. But as I begin to mature a little more in my marriage, it's just like, you know what? I don't have to have what somebody else has because if I get it, it may not work out for me the way I want to.
Correct. So, and I think sometimes you have to create what you want to see. You do. Like you said, everybody has compared ourselves. They got a big house, they got the nice cars, and they, like you said, like Judge Judy said, shiny. Everything looks shiny and it's rusted on the inside because a lot of times people do try to cover up. Like you said, it is it's a show. They try to cover up what's going on in their household. Albeit for good intentions, you don't want people to know your business or know that you're struggling. But sometimes I really feel like those are the opportunities where if you can retrospectively look at the situation and say, okay, we have a problem. Let's stop with all the shenanigans. Exactly. Let's try to let's deal with it. Let's try to figure this out. I think that helps marriages more than anything. When we can talk about being blessed, you know what I'm saying? Like God will, and I had a pastor tell me this. He said, God honors marriage. He does. And so it just like this could be the wrong person for you. And God might know it's the wrong person for you. But you don't. But you want to be married. And so God will honor marriage, but it's up to y'all to figure out, okay, what does this look like? How does this feel? Because I think honestly it starts when people get married and the wedding. And you want to have this 200 guestless wedding, and you want to have all the flowers, and you want to have all the glitter and all the everything. And then, you hopping on social media to drop your pictures and all kinds of stuff. And y'all going into the marriage in debt. Hey, girl, deep debt. Deep debt. I'm like, wait a minute. Y'all, and I'm not saying that every marriage starts off like that, but there's a possibility that a lot of people, because we don't know what's going on, a lot of people do end up going into marriage in debt or with problems that they didn't address. That's why I asked the question about, did y'all have marriage counseling before? Because I think a lot of issues that you face, if nobody gives you the heads up, then you don't know what to expect. You just kind of winging it. You walk into it blind. Yeah, and you are. I mean, you can legit. You just like, okay, wait, this ain't what I signed up for. Just hold on. Right. If we would have seen someone that wasn't a religious leader, it may have helped. Just my husband, he's not a talker. Whereas I would talk to him all the time. Mostly. But I'm like, okay, well, how do you handle this, and this? But we didn't have that, so. We were just like, okay, there's no conversation. Exactly. So we're learning together as we grew. So we're like, we're growing up together, like, okay, growing up together. This is what we're doing. That's good. And I think that happens to a lot of us. We, meet our husbands or our spouses at a particular point, and we literally start to grow together at that point. So all the things that I didn't know about you before we got married, I'm gonna find out. And some things you ain't ready for, like some things you're not ready for. It's like because it's the funniest thing. Like, and it's probably been like a few years now. I remember Denisha was like, I think I went to pick us up something to eat from a local restaurant, and I was like, what do you want? And it was a soul food restaurant. I was like, what do you want? And he was like, some squash and some fried chicken. I said, hold on. Hold on. Squash? And he was like, yeah. I said, you eat squash?
Right.
And I was like, we've been there a long time. I was like, you eat squash? And he was like, yeah, like I was supposed to know that. But I had no clue that he liked squash. I don't know if it's something that he acquired, as he got older. But I was like, I didn't know you like squash. So yes, I do think that you learn a lot about your partner because I don't feel like people stay the same.
You don't. And if you do, that's a problem. If you stay the same, that's a problem.
It is a problem because you're supposed to grow, but and I think the it's not necessarily a trick, but I think the key is to figure out how to grow together, right? So when we talk about no marriage being perfect, the arguments that might come about, sometimes it's a lot of petty things, and I feel like sometimes the petty things are like the foundations of bigger issues. Like y'all might start off fussing and arguing about one thing, but that's really not what it's about.
The undercurrent of it.
Yeah, like I feel like there's something else that might be brewing that, this was just a trigger that kind of set. You're like, wait a minute. This ain't about sweeping the floor no more.
You don't reach back and found something like, wait a minute.
Right, this ain't about sweeping the floor anymore. Like, what is this? What's going on? So I do want to ask you a question though. Whenever you and Kristen agree on anything, did you make it a point to not argue in front of your children, or did you say, "Hey, this is something that they need to see so that they know that it's not always just roses and juices and berries in the marriage, like there are some thorns," right? Did you make it a point to kind of say, okay, let's go in a room and talk, or we're going to hash this out? I mean, depending on what the conversation was about, of course. But how did you guys navigate your disagreements? Is that a word?
Girl, did you just look like, okay, Michelle,
how did y'all, your problem? How did y'all, navigate that with children?
For the most part, I try to shield my kids. Sometimes you can't always do that, but for the most part, I'm like, they don't need to see us like that because it makes kids feel a type of way. And I don't want my kids ever feel like, okay, they heard part of an argument, they didn't get all of it. Then they feel like, okay, well, I got to side with mom against dad, I got to side with dad against mom. So I did my best to make sure that my children didn't hear it, but sometimes I wasn't always able to do it, but I did try to make sure that they didn't hear.
Okay. And did you guys, I know for us, not having children grow up regular, child grow up regularly, they weren't here every day in our home. It didn't matter. We were going to argue in the living room, kitchen, bedroom. I mean, it's just saying, it was just, but I think a lot of times when we do argue, I think it's important that we keep it within the space of our home. Like, I don't think you need to run tell it. Girl, no man. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's easy, especially when you're married, when you're young in marriage. And it's easy for us to run tell mama, run tell daddy, tell your friends when problems start, arising. And I don't think that that's healthy. Like, I really think that you got to figure out early in your marriage, start talking about it. So, but did you run to your mama early in the marriage when y'all would have problems? You call her and be like, this Negro getting on my nerves. Like, okay.
I didn't run to my mama.
Okay.
I will call my best friend.
Like, girl.
Like my mother, she's into the church and she'll be throwing me some scriptures. And in that moment, I
don't want to hear that.
I love the Lord. I didn't want to hear nothing about Jesus when I'm listening. I didn't want to hear about
Right.
I will call my best friend. Listen, it's black. When I get upset, I talk really fast. I'm just like, I'm just firing off like, and she like, okay, well, and I found out that wasn't a good thing to do because that's my friend. So my friend's on the side with me, and even though I may have been wrong, my friend is on the side with me instead of telling me, good and doggone well that what you did wasn't right. So
now listen.
And so it's like she wasn't able to always give me unbiased feedback. Because again, that's my friend. And she's like, that's my ride and die. So I'm like, she like, if I got to dress up in a ninja suit and come down there, just let me know I'm gonna dress up as a ninja and we gonna handle this. But as I've gotten older, I mean, some things I'll talk to her about, but it's like nothing that's deep and personal that that I know he and I should handle in-house. So, just like a little silly crap, some crazy stuff that happens that we can chuckle at.
Now, but at the time,
at the time, it's like, I tell you something, it was World War III,
right?
And we drop an atomic bomb,
Right.
Like, pow. But I
Go
learned
ahead.
it's like everything is not for everybody. So
Right.
it's like sometimes I get that urge. I'm like, I need to take this out. And I'm like, I'll call her, and I'm just like, no, we're gonna talk about something else. In my head, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna put this on her. When I calm down, I'm gonna say what I need to say to him. And I'm gonna hope and pray that that by the time I say it, that energy is gonna come down from 10,000 to about 1%.
Yes.
But I don't think that you should run around telling everyone your business, because again, everybody's not gonna have an unbiased opinion. And sometimes people will tell you stuff purposely to try and jack up your household. Because again, it goes back to those relationship goals. If they see and think that you have a perfect relationship, they may tell you something wrong to purposely jack up what you got going on.
Yep. And then even to piggyback on what you said, you have to think about what friend you tell them what. So I'm just saying, because like you said, everybody in some perspective, everybody doesn't want to see y'all happy.
Exactly. That's true. That is so
and
true.
So there is always a possibility that as soon as they see, okay, I got a crack in the foundation, I can go ahead and ease my way in there. And some people will do that. And I'm not to say that, all your friends are sneaky and conniving. No, I'm not saying that, but you never know where somebody's headspace in at that moment when you're telling them all the things that are happening. Because I really feel like that's how a lot of adultery happens, when you start sharing. You start sharing and communicating things with someone else when you really should be communicating with your spouse.
Yep.
And I think, and somebody made a good point, communication is hard.
It is.
Especially if you're not comfortable with yourself enough to know that you can ask for what you want. Or you can, I don't want to use the word demand.
Or just tell them what you want.
Just tell them what you want.
Demand it, just tell them like, look, this is what I expect. What do you expect of me? Because that's one thing I had to start doing. Okay, look, this is what I need you to do. And you can tell me what it is you need me to do, but if you don't, I'm not going to know what it is that you need from me. But I'm going to tell you. Another thing about what you said, talking to people when it comes to adultery, if you're a ladies, don't talk to your male friends about your business. Husbands, don't talk to your female friends about your business.
Don't do it.
Because like she said, they see that little crack. They're gonna be that water that freeze and spread that crack. And next thing you know, they trying to console you in a physical way.
Yep. They just want to see a crack. And that's all most people need, especially if the foundation of your marriage is not strong. They only need an invitation
to continue to chip away at it and say, finally, cause your house to crumble.
They only need an invitation. And I've always felt like nobody should know more about what's going on nobody should know the same things about what's going on in your marriage that, y'all are experiencing. And don't get me wrong. I don't want to come across saying, well, you can't talk to your friend. I'm not saying that. I think you just have to be selective with the things that you share. Exactly. I think if you want advice, I think you need to do that in another space. Like it's not meant for people to, have access to what's going on in your relationship all that time. Because like you said, you could be getting advice from somebody that their marriage might be cracking open too.
They want you miserable. Which is sad, but that's
and then basically you got the blind leading the blind. Because if your marriage ain't working and mine ain't working,
we both about to hit the Chattahoochee, ain't gonna come back up.
Hey, what? You can't. So yeah, I think we do have to be careful with, things that we share. Because I don't think that people should have that much access to your relationship.
And they shouldn't. Yeah. Everything is not for everybody, especially when it comes to your relationship. Every nook and cranny of your relationship does not need to be broadcast to everybody. Again,
especially if y'all haven't addressed it.
Exactly.
Especially if y'all have, I can see if you want to talk to your girlfriend after y'all have talked about it. You got his perspective, you laid out yours. But I don't think that if it's something that is a problem that he doesn't know is a problem, or vice versa, I don't need to be running to my friend telling me that I have a problem with my husband that I haven't
addressed with my husband.
That I haven't addressed with my husband. It doesn't make sense.
And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, especially when you act out of emotion, when you hide, you look, this is what he did. And it's like, but it didn't. But it didn't always start off like that though.
True. And that's why I brought it up, because I'm like, I probably went to my mama a lot early in our marriage. Thank God it didn't change how she felt, how she felt about him. You know, like, I'm glad that she is a praying woman, and she was like, look,
she could cover you and cover y'all.
Yes, and that's all, and I knew that's what she was doing. Is that she just made sure that, okay, you know, and she tried, and she would never dig. She would never dig. She would never, you know, go outside of that space. I'm sharing this with you in this space. Doesn't mean there's an invitation for you to jump into my. Yeah, it was never like that. And so I'm so grateful that I had a praying mama, because that's literally all I needed was somebody to say, girl, get your butt back over there.
Exactly.
And talk to your husband, right? Right. So that's a good point when we talk about, you brought it up earlier about, you know, our spouses, and it could go both ways. Like I said, not being, you know, one might be more into religion and church. I don't like religion. I think it's just your faith. Than your spouse is, and how that can cause friction.
And you know what? I've experienced that.
Right.
I've experienced that. I'm well versed in that.
Right. I think a lot of people are, but go ahead and talk about it.
Okay, well, I said I grew up in church, so that's what I knew. But I came from one of those churches where they would preach the Bible, but it wasn't always the Bible. It was, like you said, it went back to religion. And you know, religion is a set of man-made rules.
Correct.
Because I would sit there sometimes like, and now I don't think Jesus actually said that don't even sound
Y'all
right.
made that up.
And I'm gonna say something about me. Let me tell you how crazy, how I've grown up what I thought until somebody corrected me. Because if you in some of those marriage Facebook groups, girl, listen, that stuff is just crazy. Girl, I just be sitting there listening like, oh my God. And so it's like people are always saying, well, you took vows in front of God, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, does anybody know that those vows that I always thought was in the Bible are not in the Bible, that somebody created those vows? Oh my God. Yeah, the whole promise to obey, all that stuff, that's not biblical. Seriously. That is great. Ain't in nobody Bible. That's not in the King James, the new version translation. Somebody
ain't nowhere.
No.
Oh,
somebody
my God. Okay.
Those, and that's
my naivety showing up, because I just swear it was in there.
It's not.
Okay.
And see, again, that goes back to religion. So, like I said, I was brought up in a religious home. My grandmother was on the motherboard. Mama was a missionary. A church the whole lot. So that's what I knew growing up. I knew to go to church. Wasn't so much, and I knew I had a relationship with Christ, so that was good. I had my own personal relationship, but going to church is what I knew. So if you didn't do anything else, you went to church. But he didn't grow up like that. So again, I had church brain. He didn't have church brain. And so I was thinking of everything that I had been taught growing up. And even as I got older, I went to another church here, girl. That's a whole another story about the church I went to here. It was everything that you were hearing wasn't biblical. And it would cause friction, because I was in church a whole lot. I'm not starting going to church here. I was in church a lot. When I tell you Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I was in church a lot.
Wait.
And yes. Yes,
okay.
This many days, y'all. So I was in church a lot, and it did cause friction, because it did take away some time that I could have been spending with him.
Before you go any further, to me, the conversation that we ended up having is, why you always run into that church? Who is in that church that you trying to, what is it about? Because, you know, men look at men as men. You know, whether they are of the cult or whatever we want to call it, he's still a man.
Exactly.
And so it was, you know, the question, why you always running to the church? What's in the church that it's like, probably because I love God. Maybe that's really what it's. There's nothing else other than that. But when you have someone who did grow up in church, they don't understand that dynamic.
They don't. Not at all. They don't. And I said, I went to church a lot, but it wasn't. I'm trying to think how the best way to word it. It wasn't about growing spiritually. It was just what I knew to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, it helped, but at the same time it hurt because I did spend a whole lot of time in church. And when things would go wrong between he and I could run the church. That was a safe space for me where I didn't have to be in the same space for a little while, and I could get away from like whatever it is we were going through at the time. I had a reprieve from it. Right. So it was a it was a double-edged sword. Yes, I'm going to church a whole lot. You're not going with me. I'm asking him to go, but he's like, I ain't doing all of that. Because sometimes people like, why can't you just stay home? And I didn't have a valid reason as to why I could not go to church because that's what I did. I went to church. Yeah. But it was a semi-safe space, and then it was taken away time. So
but you eventually, would you say that you just had to figure out how to work through that? In terms of him not, I feel like most people will say you have to be with somebody who's equally yoked. That's the first thing that people like to hear. Yeah, I have to be equally yoked. I'm like, but what does that mean? To me, there's so many layers to that. That like
it's like an onion. Just peel them things back. Even being equally yoked, I mean, some people they start out that way, and then one person they falling off. But I don't even look at it like that anymore. My whole thing is, if you love God and you have a relationship with Christ, we're good. That's good for me. I mean, honestly, I can't do something. If you don't have a relationship, your own relationship with Christ, I can't do with you. Right. We can be friends. If you're an atheist, I can love you, but we can't have a relationship.
Because that definitely will create a lot of
chasm.
Yeah. That will definitely hurt the relationship if it's that drastic. So I've always wondered about that whole equally yoked thing. Like, I'm always like, what does that mean? So what? If you got a degree, he need to have a degree. If you go to church, he need to go to church. If you got this and you got this, like y'all need to be the same like mine. And I'm like, a lot of times we're never in the same space at the same time.
Never.
We're never there. In the moments that we go, okay, this feels real good. But when we're not, we recognize that, hey, I need to hold up my husband. Exactly. But he needs to hold me up, because I always felt like we're never going to be in the same space at the same time.
It's a good thing. You can be in the same space. Okay, you can be in the same space at the same time on different things. Okay. Most of the time when people talk about not being equally yoked, that's religious talk. That's church brain. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because again, if you love God and I love God, we're equally yoked right there, because you love God. Right. I love God. Right. We're equally yoked right there.
And we can figure out the rest.
Exactly. Yeah. I was raised Pentecostal. They're Baptists. So you got the
same man.
Yeah, exactly. So you come to church with me, you see people rolling on the floor, you trying to figure out what's going on. So there's that. But again, I think a lot of people, they just like to throw out scripture just to try and, throw that religious guilt on you. I know you don't have to be equally yoked in everything, because if you're stronger in one area, I'm going to let you have that. Yeah. If I'm strong in one area, give me that. So that way we're balancing each other out.
Absolutely. Because I know, and when we talk about, no marriage being perfect, essentially what we're giving ourselves, I don't want people to mistake that as a way to say you can just go into this thing making all kinds of mistakes and doing whatever the heck you want to do. And I don't think by any means that is what I want to, convey. What I do want to convey is that you have to give yourself flexibility in your marriage to make mistakes. And sometimes it's not even about us making mistakes. It's not about somebody being wrong. It's usually just about, this is life. And this is what we're going through at this particular moment. And we just got to figure out how to make it work.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to compare my marriage or how, it's not, well, how did they do it?
Exactly.
They did it how they did it. It has nothing to do with
the way they came out.
Right. It has nothing to do with, how you handle. I really wanted this conversation to be about acknowledging that, the way that this world is and the way that social media is, that it just gives us this false
impression of marriage.
It gives us a false impression of marriage. And I'm not going to sit here and say marriage is just bad, because it's not.
It's not at all.
I crack up with my husband most days, and we laughing usually about each other. So silly to me. Right. Like like when I was going through the hearing loss, he was getting on my nerves, but I was able to laugh about it because it was something really hard for me. But being able to laugh about it and have somebody that I can talk to about it, and sit there watching him in the office, like push the button. I agree with you because you want to push the button. I was like, oh my God. So it was just so stuff like that. I think being able to share your life and your everyday with somebody, I think that's a blessing.
It is. It's a real blessing. But then what people don't realize, you say, going back to the wedding, that's what I think a lot of people, they want that. They want a wedding, but they don't want the marriage. The marriage, like I said, it's not bad. Marriage is great, but it's work.
It's work.
And you have to learn how to put it in the work.
It's a good way to put it. It's definitely work.
Because it's just like anything else, what you put into your marriage is what you're going to get out of it. You don't put nothing into it. What you expect to get out? You can't get nothing from nothing. So marriage is work. You have to work at it. You have to learn how to enjoy one another.
Absolutely.
Like I said, we will crack up at like the craziest crack. Like my kids took on my husband by his feet because he don't like people touching his feet.
Right.
He can't. My God, today he cannot stand that.
Right.
And one day, I told my daughter, my young daughter, I said, "You're feeling like your daddy's," and she just burst into tears. She said, I said, "I'm so sorry." And I told him, he was like, "Did she really cry?" Fell out laughing.
She did.
And listen, we're blowing out tears. And my middle daughter said, she said, "I didn't love my husband because I had let him get pregnant with 3 kids." Because I said, "You know what your daughter said about you?" And I told him, and man, I'm laughing. He said, I said, "Yeah." I'm like, she said that. So there's stuff like that. You have to find humor in little stuff. Like, we're both working on weight loss and stuff. And I always say, I'm like, yeah, we're going to get fine. And then you're like, "You saying I'm not fine?" I'm like, "No," I'm like, "You're not fine. But you're going to get fine."
Oh my God, we just saying the same conversation.
Stuff like that. Like, it's like, I walk up to him, like, I rub his belly. I'm like, this is my, this is my junior in the bar. I'm rubbing this, trying to get the junior to pop. Like, he could be looking at me like, "Are you for real?" And I got pictures I put on Facebook that you commented on. He can't stand when I do stuff like that.
I was like, because he's so quiet. Like he's so middle of the road. Like it's this.
Yeah,
it's this. And so when I was like, she get on his nerves.
When I did that one post and I looked at his face on it, he was like, "You did that in front of me." Because we was walking back to the table. He said, I'm walking back to the table, I'm in tears of laughing so hard. I was like, I should have known, but yeah, you have to have somebody.
And you do, and I think that's the beauty of what marriage was intended for, was to actually, have somebody that you could, bounce things off of, and, be able to navigate. Because I don't know how I would deal right now if I had to be in the dating pool.
Girl. But can we cuss on you?
We cuss.
Okay, because from what I understand, in dating pool, we got piss and shit. That's what I've been hearing. They got piss and shit in it. And I'm like, no.
I don't know what I would do. I think I would be like, I'm just gonna be single.
Yeah, listen,
I'm gonna deal with it.
I listen to all that. I look at stuff, and like Facebook. I mean, it's just crazy. But the Kevin Samuels and his high value men and women, and all this whole 50-50. I'm like, can I let me just stay over here?
Right. Let me stay about all the bubble.
What y'all going through?
Yes. We ain't doing all that. So this is good. I think it's important while we talk about, the bad, because that's just life. It's gonna happen. Yep. I don't want people to get to a point that as soon as they hit a brick wall, that they feel like, okay, that's it. We don't need to be together no more. You're not who I thought you were, and that can't happen, honestly. And I don't want to tell you to stay with somebody either that, you know, is abusing you or whatever the case may be. But if there's room
To work it out.
to work it out, I think it's worth a challenge, because even though these vows are now not
Not.
it's like, okay, so what do we do? I think it's still you making a commitment
It is.
to each other that we're gonna try our best to make this thing work. And I think about, you know, how when you look back, Tamara, when you look back over the life that y'all have had and the things that you've been through, you can't help but come out stronger.
Mhm.
And I mean, y'all gotten kids out the way and changed careers. And did he retire?
You did.
Okay,
Mhm.
retired from the military, being a military spouse, all
Mhm.
of that. I think, would you say when you look back over the 23 years, but were y'all together longer than that?
Mm-hmm. We've been together 25 years.
25 years. So out of the 25 years that y'all been together and navigating all the things that I just mentioned, have you learned anything about yourself that you didn't know before you got married?
Yes, you don't, until you go through certain things, you don't realize how much strength you actually have. Because things will happen, it'll knock the air out you, and you don't know how you're gonna bounce back from it. But yeah, I realized that I had more strength than what I had given myself credit for. And also that I have my voice. And my voice, and
that's good. That's good.
My voice.
That's good. And that's something I didn't discover until later on.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't discover my voice until later on. I don't want to say that I was passive, but I was a pleaser.
Listen.
Yeah.
Going along,
I was a pleaser. I just wanted things to be like, you don't want to do it? Okay. But deep down in my heart, I really want to do it.
Exactly.
But because I want to keep peace,
just let
it go. But now I'm like, no, I really want to do it. I really want to do this. Like, I don't want to compromise that much anymore. And not to say that it was always lopsided, because I'm pretty sure, you know, he compromised a lot on a lot of things, especially when I was going through, you know, illnesses. I'm pretty sure that, you know, it's probably stuff he wanted to do, he couldn't do. I'm saying it's a give and take, you know, in marriage most of the time. But yes, I just wanted to please, but he's the complete opposite. He has the effort attitude. Listen. People. So yeah. So did you guys figure out, you know, that, hey, we're both in different spaces, so we have to adjust to one another as we get older? Like, how has that been for y'all?
It was a bumpy ride, especially like I said, when I found my voice and I refused to put it back in the box. He had to adjust that because he was so used to me being nice and not really being passive, but just being like going along to get along. So he was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know how to deal with this new person.
Yeah. You changed the rules.
I did.
Then that's the way I was talking to another wife, an older wife, because I think they probably married for like 40 years or so. And she was like, you changed the rules. And you probably didn't give him the instructions on how to play it.
No notice, no nothing. It was just like one day, bro, I'm like, no.
And he's like, wait, what?
Exactly. So it was like, it threw him for a loop. But it helped him grow too. Now he has to see, okay, yeah, I can't just have a whole fucking attitude. Have a whole
you can't
have a whole effort attitude all the time, because she's not gonna take that effort attitude anymore. So that's helped him grow as a person.
Right.
So I'm like,
I think that, you know, it's interesting how marriage works, because when we're doing it at the time and we're saying I do, all we're thinking about, in my opinion, all we're thinking about is that wedding day.
Yes, that was dominant.
And somebody asked me to marry him. You know, he asked me to marry him. I said yes. You know, and I think it just builds this, I don't know, this list of items that we don't check off that really are going to make the difference in our marriages. And I feel like, you know, the day that we get married, it's really the day that you start getting to know the person that you're gonna spend the rest of your life with.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you put in some work to get to the wedding day. Just
Put in a
enough.
lot of, you put in a lot of work, but then when you get married, that you're like, oh, that honeydew list is like, oh, wait a minute. You go back to, I didn't sign up for all that.
Right.
It's a lot.
And I don't know why it changes like that. And I think it's because the vows are involved. And I think it's because the paper is involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because we are like, this is final.
Yep. This is
It should be. It's not always the case, but this is final, and this is, where we are. And so I think that we don't really think about it. I don't suspect that you really should, because there's, like you said, there's no game.
It's not.
You figure it out as you go. But I like to think in some perspective that you learn or giving yourself an opportunity to learn something about the person that you go call your husband. At least I hope you do. So while we wrap this up, I did want to touch on a couple of things, and mainly for those that desire to be married. There are a lot of single women who I will tell you, stay in your singleness, find who you are before you think you need to hook up with someone else or attach to someone else. Definitely, like, Tamara said, find your voice first, because it does give you not necessarily power in your marriage, but it gives you a space, in your marriage where you don't feel like you're having to compromise all the time, that you feel like you're the one who's bending all the time to make it work.
And you're not being heard.
Right. And so let's talk about, we'll close. Let's talk about, what do you think, if you could give a young woman, older woman, there's some older women out here that want to be married, they want a spouse. What would you say that they need to do? Or, let's just say that. What do they need to do for themselves before they get married?
Again, know who you are as a person. Because if you don't know yourself, now you're gonna be in trouble. So that's one thing I should say. Know yourself, use your voice, and when you get married, don't go in thinking it's gonna be sunny days every day. Because some days it's gonna rain, but the rain doesn't last always.
Right.
Marriage is not the wedding can be a fairy tale, but marriage is not always a fairy tale, but it's not a bad thing. So go in open-minded. It's good to have expectations, but always leave room for grace for yourself, and leave grace for your spouse when it comes to your expectations, because sometimes you may not meet the expectation you set for yourself, and then your spouse may not meet that expectation that you have set for them. But one thing that I do think is extremely important: communication. Always keep the lines of communication open. If you're a person who is like me, who wants to just go ahead and get it out while you on 10,000, that's not always good. Just learn how you have to learn how to bring it down. It took me a long time to bring it down. And when you get into an argument, don't listen to react. Listen to understand what your partner is saying, because when you listen to respond and react, it's going to escalate the situation. So take what they're saying, think about it, and then and don't respond, but give an answer to what they're saying to you, and vice versa. So that way your lines of communication are open. They'll feel safe coming to you, and you will feel safe coming to them.
Yes, that's really, really good. Listening to understand and not react is so crucial. So crucial. In relationships in general. I mean, it could be with children, it could be with anybody. But listening to understand is important. And I will tell you, don't try to talk to him when the game is on. Don't do that.
I'm a college football widow.
Yeah, but don't do that. Don't try to talk to him when the game is so about. Don't try to talk to him when y'all are going to sleep or when somebody's tired. Don't do that. Don't do that. Find a time when you both are at your peak communication time. Like, I am not a good talker in the morning. I'm just not. And it irritates me to no end. And I think he knows that. It irritates me to no end to try to carry on the conversation at 8, 9 o'clock. I can't do it. I can't do it. So I think trying to find time that's ideal to communicate is also important. You know, definitely not in public.
Oh, no.
Don't try to have conversations.
No, because somebody gonna call 911.
Right,
So
right. Don't do that. But yeah, I think the key is to really just existing together and then figuring out, okay, how can we live? How can we live? How can we have this life together is more important than just existing with somebody. Because I can just exist with you. You can be in the room, I can be in other rooms.
Exactly.
You have to find a way to have a life
And live.
something collective that you two can both feel rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
It should never be, you know,
Sure.
one-sided, right? It should never be that way. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation completely, and I know you know we can continue to talk on and on and on, but I did want to give us an opportunity to get back to our day. I appreciate you so much for coming through. I really enjoyed this space, and I may invite you back.
Oh, wait a minute.
So we can have, you know, some more conversations about some specific things that I think we go through as wives, and it could be a number of things that you and I have also talked about health issues that we've had in marriage and what that looks like. So I definitely thank you so much for joining me, and we'll try our best, or at least try your best, to have intentional communication with your spouse. Definitely try to have experiences that maybe you two have never done before. You know, definitely try to have experiences with your spouse. You know, don't always look at the negative aspects of the things that are happening. And number one, don't compare.
Nope.
Don't compare your marriage to anybody else's marriage. I promise you, it's not worth it.
It's not gonna work.
And I guarantee you, they over there fussing and cussing.
People falling on box cutters.
Each other. But anyway, thank you so much for joining Waffles and Wives. You guys have a great night. See you next week.